Hey everyone, welcome back to the podcast. Today I want to talk about a really important topic, and that is how to eat a carnivore-based diet and stay regular. Okay. Some people, or many people, I should say, are coming to understand the importance of having quality meat and quality fish in the diet, its role in blood sugar support, its role in hormone health, its role in energy production, its role in maintaining lean muscle mass, in supporting mitochondrial health, in cellular health, tissue repair. Honestly, the benefits of eating quality meat, it's a laundry list, and many people are catching on to this. We're coming to understand this more and more. And sometime when we start to learn something new, and I've been through this journey myself, not so much with carnivore, but with other dietary practices, in earlier years in my life. But when we catch on to something new and we're like, this is the thing, that's it, right? Then we tend to go overboard. A lot of people, anyway, not everyone, of course, but we tend to go overboard. We tend to go to extremes. We're like, this is it. I'm all in. That's it. Nothing else, right? And um, and so sometimes we get on this track, and I've found that this can be said for eating more meat and coming to find like, okay, meat is awesome. Let's just eat meat every single, like lots and lots of meat. I had a client the other day tell me that he eats around like 180 grams or 200 grams or something like that of meat. And I was like, okay, that's too much. I love your motivation. I love where your head's at. But they were actually getting some symptoms as a result. And so this can often happen when we go overboard with something. And I'll hone in on diet, so I'll give the example of diet here, and especially carnivore, that sometimes we go 100% balls to the wall and it's like, okay, carnivore or bust, right? No plants, nothing else, just meat, salt, water. And then you see people on Instagram like just eating raw meat and drinking water and blending it in a blender, and it's like, oh my God, that's fucking disgusting. Like, um I'm sorry, but there's more to eating than just like, let's throw raw meat in a blender with salt and water and chug. It's like, hey, there's a lot more layers here, and it needs to be, enjoyable and pleasurable and taste good and so forth. But, why I'm bringing this up here at the beginning of the episode is because I I want to make it clear that, eating meat and adding meat into the diet, for most of the population, is a really good idea. There's only a small percentage of the population, and I'm talking about very, very small, like people with kidney disease or on dialysis, who shouldn't be eating like, 100 grams or so of meat a day, including fish, right? But we tend to go overboard with our diet trends and practices. So while I'm going to talk about carnivore today, I'm not talking about balls to the wall carnivore where that's all you eat. You don't eat anything else except for meat, water, and salt, right? That actually isn't an optimal practice, just meat, salt, and water. Okay. And I'll talk more about why throughout the episode. Okay. But what I'm referring to here during this episode is that many people reach out with this question, and somebody recently did on my Instagram uh page. And so I'm like, yes, this is a good topic. This is a good topic because when we start to eat more meat, we start to eat more butter, when we start to eat more of these nutrient rich foods, sometime what happens is digestion slows down. And this is a common complaint that many people experience. And so I want to deep dive into this here today. So, and I will mention that it is very rare, very, very rare, for me to recommend a 100% carnivore diet to one of my ancestral diet clients. It's very rare, and if this is ever the case or the path that I encourage them to go down, it's always short term. It would always be a very short term practice, because whenever we see these type of diet extremes, anything extreme really, we want we want to tread the waters very lightly, and we want to ask ourselves, hey, is this really a long-term solution? Is it a short-term plan to help me get to the long-term solution, right? And with diet trends, and including like a hardcore carnivore, we need to take a short-term plan with hardcore carnivore, like 100% meat, like just plants, just meat, salt, and water. That's a very short-term, I'm talking like maybe 2 months tops, approach to somebody's healing journey. And that approach would be used to turn somebody around in a really rapid way. Let's say, like, somebody has really struggles with their weight. And again, it's not going to be for everyone. But when it comes to carnivore, a lot of people jump down this diet, they're going all in. And what I want to encourage here is, and I think I'm beating a dead horse, but meat is good, but it shouldn't be like the only thing you eat. Okay. And I guess I'll just mention here a few reasons why, and the main reasons why you don't want to go 100% carnivore, meat, salt, water. Because if you're carnivore for too long, then you're going to start seeing side effects. You're going to see mineral imbalances. You're going to see sleep issues. You're often going to see bowel issues. And the gut microbiome, which I'm going to talk a lot about here during this episode, but the gut microbiome does respond to the food you eat, right? And we're trained to think that that's the only way that we that our gut microbiome is influenced by is the food that we eat. However, the gut microbiome is influenced by a lot of factors, including your light environment. And I'm going to talk about that more here today. But if you're carnivore for too long, then your gut microbiome won't have the chance to, how do I say this, diversify or create other gut beneficial bacteria strains that are produced by things like plant material or fermented cultured dairy products and so forth. So you can really mess your gut up on any strict diet, because the gut microbiome, it's like if you don't eat certain foods, then certain gut bacteria won't get produced or won't get fed and will starve themselves out. And so then, you'll end up creating gut dysbiosis in a way by having too simplified of a diet. And constipation can be one side effect here. And one of the reasons is because all of your gut bacteria are not getting fed. And so therefore, many of them are dying off. And so then your gut is impacted. Now, I eat a lot of meat. I feel better when I eat meat. It doesn't mean that I'm a plant hater, right? I just feel better when I eat meat, and my clients feel better when they eat meat. And this includes, when I say meat, I'm meaning animal protein. So that includes cultured dairy products, that includes wild caught seafood and fish. I eat quality meat, grass-fed, unjabbed. We raise some of our own meat on our farm, and the rest of my meat I buy from Jeff Bezos. Just kidding. The rest of my meat I buy from small family farms. And I am buying less and less meat from my grocery store, even like my organic co-op. Most areas have a co-op in their area. I am buying less and less, especially of my my meat and seafood from these places. And I'm buying it from more small farms. And I know what's in the food. I know how the animal was raised. I have a better idea of, hey, were there antibiotics administered throughout this animal's life? Were they jabbed? You know, I can get more information from small farmers than I can even at my local co-op. And most people at the local co-op, you know, are into jabs and so forth, and so they don't really care. You know, they think it's a good idea. And if you've been listening to the podcast for a while, you know why that's really not a good idea, and how it can be very detrimental to health. So I'm buying more and more of my meat from small family farms. I really encourage you to do the same for the same reason, just because it's going to be better in the long run for your health, for your well-being, for your family's well-being. Um, and so I just want to put that out there and give you a little bit of my experience and let you know that I eat a lot of meat and I'm regular, and um, it's really a misconception and a myth that if you eat more meat, then your digestion should slow down. Or if you read like carnivore blogs or information out there, they're like, oh, you're just getting more nutrients on carnivore, so your body's taking longer to absorb them, so your bowel transit time is going to be less. That's a load of crap, right? You should be having a bowel movement every day, even if you eat meat. And I never count, but I just um kind of going off of some experience here. I eat around 100 grams of protein a day. Some days it'll be a little less, some days it'll be a little more. And and still my bowels function, okay? And they function well. And so and this just isn't me. I've had this experience with my wife eats a similar diet, my clients eat a similar diet, and so you know, we all stay regular. And so I just want to say, if you've you know, Googled or try to figure out why you're not having more bowel movements, and they say like, oh, you're not eating enough salt or drinking enough water, which we want to be sure we're checking those boxes, right? But you know, usually the easy way out, I feel like this is a really easy way out answer. It's like, oh, yeah, it's just your gut's absorbing more nutrients, so it's going to take longer to go, you know, travel through your gut and absorb and assimilate and so forth. And that is a complete myth. That food should not be hanging out in your gut for, you know, you shouldn't go a day without having a bowel movement with eating while eating you know, a more carnivore based diet. So today, you know, what if this is your issue? Okay. What if you're like, that sounds amazing, Heather, but I still have gut issues when I eat more butter, when I eat, you know, when I eat more animal fat, when I eat more animal protein, one or the other. And so today I want to talk about why constipation can be an issue on a carnivore diet. And we need to deep dive into this topic, right? Because you can go to somebody's blog or listen to them and they'll be like, eat more water, drink more water, eat more salt, you know, make sure you're moving. It's like you're probably doing all of those things if you're into health and you're trying to eat a healthy diet and you're trying to use diet to support your healing process, right? And you're like, wait, I'm doing all those things, right? So we need to deep dive into this. We need to look beyond the surface. We need to take a look here about what is really going on. And there are several factors that need to be considered. And so for this reason, I suspect my answers to your questions here around carnivore and bowel health are going to be a bit different than what other people have shared. And at least I hope, you know, I hope so, because I found other suggestions to be unhelpful. And people do all the right things and they're like, yep, I've checked that box. I'm eating salt, I'm drinking water. I have some plant protein in, excuse me, I have some plant foods in my diet. I'm eating some fermented foods. Like, it doesn't make sense, right? And so then we hear the excuse me, the recommendations to, oh, okay, well, if you do all that, then just drink some more senna tea. This may not seem like a Band-Aid because it's a quote unquote natural herbal product, but it's a Band-Aid. You know it, you know a Band-Aid is a Band-Aid when you stop taking the supplement or tea or food or whatever it may be, and your symptoms return. That means we actually weren't getting anywhere near, to the root of this issue. We were just suppressing the symptom and using it as a band-aid with the senna tea or whatever it may be. Okay, so then what tends to come up is a lot of like disappointment and shame in people, and and then I thought I dealt with that syndrome. That's like, I thought I dealt with that syndrome is when, you have a symptom that you've, like, let's say constipation, and you've been doing enemas or senna tea or magnesium supplements. And let's say you're like, I don't want to do that anymore. Or you go on vacation and you forget to take it with you, or it's not available, whatever it may be. And then the symptom actually comes back, or your body gets used to that product, like the senna tea, and then just goes back to constipation. And you're like, wait, I thought I dealt with that, right? I call it, I thought I dealt with that syndrome, because when we use Band-Aids to treat, quote unquote, treat our symptoms, that mindset can come up. I thought I dealt with that syndrome, and so we typically don't truly rectify our symptoms. We've just put a lot of Band-Aids over them, and we think if something is like herbal or natural that it's not a Band-Aid, but it doesn't always have to be a Band-Aid. But if you stop that B vitamin or senna tea or magnet, whatever it may be, and your symptoms come back, that's how you can tell a Band-Aid that it's a Band-Aid. So okay, throughout this episode, I'm going to be talking about the gut microbiome. I'm going to be talking about suppressive therapies. I'm going to be talking about minerals. I'll talk a little bit about water. I'm going to talk about homeopathy as well as sunlight. And when it comes to reasons you may struggle with sluggish bowel when eating more meat and butter and these sort of really nutrient-rich animal foods. And I'm going to talk about why I caution against the use of constipation Band-Aids like laxatives, magnesium supplementation, and so forth, so that you can get a better understanding of, hey, why might you be struggling with constipation when you're eating more meat? Okay. And this is a very, unique, the answer to this question is unique to you. There's not like a one size fits all answer to why are you struggling with constipation when you eat more meat. There's not a one size fits all answer. Okay. And so I'm going to go into all of these different areas that I mentioned so you can understand, hey, what may be my reason? What might be my unique reason that I'm struggling with this issue? Before I dive into the episode, I want to announce that I have new openings this month. This is March 2024 for my one-on-one ancestral diet work. And I'm also taking new homeopathic clients. These practices, as you'll learn more about throughout this episode, are key to removing root causes of health struggles and to slowing and even in some cases removing genetic predispositions from the organism. You can learn more about these healing services that I offer over at my site, heatharshepard.com, HeatharShepard.com. And okay, I'm gonna give you I'm gonna be honest. Okay. I'm gonna be honest and upfront here and say that if you're really ready to dive into your healing process, or to deepen it, or to make some changes or to go about it in a way that you've never gone about it before, and you're ready to commit in a new way, then book the session. Then that's when you book the session with me. You book the homeopathy session, book the ancestral diet session. Okay. If that's you, if you're like, yes, I'm ready, I'm all game, I'm all in, then book the session. If you're like, well, I want to like try this practitioner and new diet, and then don't book the session, Really, I want it to be a strong yes, because when I work with people, I commit to their healing practice process. I show up for you and put a lot of effort and commitment into that process with you, because I feel like from me, and when I went through my healing process, it was like, I could think of one person who was really on my team, who was really on board for me, who was really rooting for me, who really showed up for me, and I will never forget this person. And now that right there was extremely healing for me, because I knew they were going to show up. I knew they were going to support me. I knew that I could reach out if I was having some sort of flare or aggravation of symptoms or whatever it may be. And today, I feel like people, health practitioners, whether it's holistic or whoever it is, allopathic, the ability to show up and respond and be present for their clients, I think we have a lot of room for growth there. And I've had a lot of disappointment myself in that process. And so I feel like that's a huge part of the healing process. So, whether you choose to work with me or someone else, I cannot encourage you enough to please find someone that you feel good about, not just that has 200K followers on Instagram. Who gives a shit about that? Are they going to be able to show up for you? Are they going to be able to invest in your healing process? Are they going to be there coaching you through the process, answering your questions? That piece is missing today in all wakes of healthcare, so to speak. So I just wanted to put that out there. Okay, let's get into the episode so you can learn how to eat a carnivore-based diet and stay regular and support your bowel health. And I'm going to start by saying, actually, I'm going to break down several things. I'm going to talk about antibiotics and gut health to start with. So, we have done a really solid job of weakening and compromising our gut microbiome with the use of antibios and other RX meds. Yes, this includes jabs 1,000,000%. So, while cavemen may have only eaten meat, right? While Homo sapiens before farms developed 12,000 years ago may have only gnawed on bones and sucked out the marrow and feasted on meat, they could do so without experiencing intestinal distress and constipation, because they didn't have allopathic interference that completely destroys, compromises, weakens the gut and the immune system. So when someone tells you, oh, Homo sapiens have been eating meat for eons, yep, that's true. And we should be eating meat still today. But unfortunately, we've compromised our guts big time. Big time. I don't know one person on this planet who doesn't struggle with their bowels in some way, shape, or form. Okay? And we have to remember that, I'm going to throw out some names. This is just, anonymous, right? We have to remember that while Frank over there, who only eats ribeyes, is on like a ribeye only diet, and Debbie over there eats meat, salt, and water, and they have no issues with their stool. Let's just say you know a friend who knows a friend who has fine bowel health and eats meat, salt, and water or ribeyes only. And you're like, yeah, that's a good idea. I'm going to do that. Yes, that's a good idea. And then you do it and you are like, wait, I haven't shit in a week, right? Or 5 days or whatever it may be. It's not because Frank and Debbie are, are better than you in some way, or that um it's not because you're a hopeless case. It's not because, this works for them and it doesn't work for me, so maybe my case is just incurable. These are the thoughts that go through our mind when we try something that's like a miracle cure for someone, but then you do it and you're like, oh my God, I feel like so bad, right? It's because the genetic predispositions that Frank and Debbie had are not on this level of constipation. Okay. But for you, you likely have a genetic predisposition to some form of bowel health issues. Maybe one of your parents had Crohn's, or they had colitis, or they had colon cancer, or they had some sort of down the line had a gut health issue. Okay. And so then you do something to tweak, something a little bit different, and your gut microbiome's like, whoa. And then that genetic predisposition kicks in a little bit. Okay. It's important to understand that the health issues you struggle with are due to the genetic predispositions unique to your family line. And yes, the anti-bios you got at birth and the jabs you got at birth, or when you were 3 and 4 and or when you were 20 and so on and so forth. These things all deepen the genetic predisposition. So we have to understand that the more we add to the body, the more suppressives we add to the body, the deeper the genetic predisposition gets, meaning the closer you move to a more chronic chronic disease state. Okay. But also we're under this belief that if I just take this thing a few times, then, it's not going to really affect me, right? And unfortunately, that's just not the case. So, especially these suppressive therapies, I don't even want to call them therapies, but they're, suppressives that we put in our body before we knew better, before we had an awareness around this, before our parents had an awareness around this, right? We have to understand that these therapies don't just it's not like magic man poof and disappear without consequences. Okay. The consequences of these suppressives stay in the body. They lodge themselves nicely in the gut, wiping out the gut microbiome, weakening the immune system, compromising the immune system. So when you decide to eat more meat or butter or both and your digestion slows way down, we have to look back over time and see why this story is really playing out in this way. It's not likely the meat, unless you're just doing meat, salt, water, that's it. And, it's not likely the diet. Okay. And it's often the suppressives you had throughout your life that have compromised your gut microbiome, have compromised your immune system, that put a chokehold on your gut microbiome. And we have to start to go in and undo this mess. And no, this cannot be rectified with green banana flour and some lactobacillus, some acidophilus. It's not going to work. But I will talk about other ways that can effectively restore the gut microbiome after, these allopathic assaults. This is one reason why people struggle with constipation. That's one reason, okay? Let's talk about beneficial microbes, beneficial gut microbes. Now, the modern culture is pretty obsessed with cleanliness. The carrots are triple washed at the grocery store. The spinach in grocery stores looks like it came out of a dishwasher. A wax layer is added to fruits and still allowed to be labeled organic. I mean, honestly, really, we're not in touch with microbes anymore. And we've been feared into thinking that microbes are bad, they're dangerous, they're disease promoting. And what's disease promoting about microbes is a weak immune system who cannot defend itself against microbes. Okay. And this is exactly how our medical, our food, our education systems train us to think. Fear microbes, they're the problem, right? But they're not the problem. The further we move away from nature and being outside and growing our own food and getting our hands in the dirt and raising animals and picking up their dung and putting it in the compost pile and growing carrots in the earth that actually has, you know, that composted dung in it, we're totally removed from this, okay? And so our immune systems cannot defend themselves, one, because they've experienced too many suppressive therapies, and two, because we're not being exposed to, that many microorganisms to help strengthen our gut microbiome, to help strengthen our immune system. Okay. And so, you know, um, we need to get our hands in the dirt. We need to, step in a pile of cow dung once in a while. We need to drink raw milk. We need to eat butter made from cream that's been culturing on the counter for a few days. We need to stick our feet in the earth, and we need to interact with animals because they expose us to different bacteria. But we've been feared into this as well. Oh, your chickens might have bird flu. What the fuck? Are you kidding me? Like, this isn't a commercial farm. These are small family farms. And, they're fearing people saying they have, bird flu and your cow has this disease and needs this shot. And it's like it's total control and manipulation and fear tactics. Okay, maybe stepping in a pile of cow dung took it a bit too far, but I think you know what I'm saying. Of course I bathe and wash my hands and and this sort of thing. But what I really want to get to here is our guts are deficient in beneficial bacteria, and we think the answer is to take a probiotic. But this is not the answer. It's never the answer. And probiotics, especially long term, really are not a great idea because they cause gut dysbiosis. You'll get to a point where you have so many of the more of that probiotic, whatever strains are in that probiotic in your gut, and then they'll start to wipe out other strains because the gut is it's a competitive environment, right? And so if you just take acidophilus every day, that you'll build up, an excess amount of those bacteria, and it'll start wiping out other beneficial bacteria because of this dominance, of this competitive environment in the gut. So I am not a fan of probiotics and taking them in powdered form. And if they even survive past the stomach lining, is a good question. But probiotics I have found cause gut dysbiosis and an array of unnecessary and concerning symptoms. And everyone, we all have heard all disease starts in the gut, right? Well, I think there's some validity to that. But the thing is, we don't know what does this mean? We don't know that all diseases start in the gut, right? We don't really know that. It sounds nice, right? It's like, oh, how simple. And then we just work on our gut, right? And then we're again, getting to this simplified place. But it's because we assault the gut from birth and we compromise the gullet and beneficial strains of bacteria in our gut with all the jabs and antibiotics and so forth that are basically jammed into us starting at a young age. So the gut microbiome is compromised from starting from a very young age, from all the suppressives, and then add on top of that our modern day clean obsession, right? We need to get dirty sometimes, stick our feet in the earth, stick our feet in the ocean, walk on the rocks, eat a piece of butter that falls on the floor, you know? And they've convinced us to fear microbes, that microbes are the problem. Microbes are not the problem. The weakened immune system is the problem. And they've convinced us, that we won't even, sometimes we don't even know, like, wait a minute, but how did they convince us of this, right? And let's take a really obvious one, and that is pasteurization of milk. They've convinced us that the pasteurization of milk was for our safety, for the health of the people, right? Okay. Often it's cows in confinement who aren't cleaned before milking. And once they're milked, the milk isn't properly cooled, which if you cool the milk um in a timely manner, then if there is any pathogens in the milk, they can't survive. They need warm. They need a warm, hot environment to survive. You cool that down rapidly, and they can't survive, right? But if you do it in this way, then you're not cleaning the cows. You're not cooling the milk properly. Then E. coli can show up in the milk. And here's the thing, we know that when pasteurization of milk came about, that how people were raising cows it was, and this is a general point here. Not everyone was doing this, of course, but they were more crowded conditions. They didn't understand or care about cleanliness. They were feeding them all this nasty stuff from um, left over from distilleries, and it wasn't in a humane environment for the cow. I'll also say a healthy gut should see a pathogen like E. coli, like, okay, that's a pathogen right there. It should be able to engulf it and remove it from the body with very few to minimal to no symptoms. But pasteurization, they say, makes milk drinkable again. That's a good t-shirt, maybe. um, but so now we can benefit from this food. We can keep the animals in a shithole barn and feed them horrific things and never wash them and never muck their stall, pasteurize the milk, and we can make milk drinkable again, right? Now we can benefit from this food once we heat it up and destroy anything that ever lived in that milk, because not only does the E. coli die, but everything in that milk dies. Okay. They didn't pasteurize the milk for us, however. They pasteurized it for them. Don't believe for 1 second that they have your best interest in mind, because they don't. They make it sound like they do. They can be very convincing. They pasteurized milk because it extends the shelf life of milk, period. So all the farms they subsidize can benefit, period. That's why. So anything that's pasteurized has a longer shelf life, and it's a win for the producer and a lose for you, the consumer, because that product is basically dead, and it has dead things swimming in like liquid. And this is why they started homogenizing milk. So it started out with pasteurization, and then they're like, what's all this sludge on the bottom of the milk, right? So but they told us that they homogenized the milk for you, right? So you didn't have to deal with the cream on the top. Like, let's talk about some real problems, guys. Like, really? So they did it because all of the bacteria and the enzymes that are killed during the pasteurization process, and that grows and develops well after several days of sitting on the shelf. Well, the milk started to develop a thick sludge on the bottom of it. So they said, this isn't good for sales. let's homogenize it, mix all of the dead sludge together so people buy it. I mean, you know, it's marketing, their marketing strategy. But they told you they did this, that they homogenized the milk to create a cleaner product. No one wants to mess with the cream on the top, right? I mean, come on, we got shit to do. Pasteurization weakens the gut microbiome. Homogenization, the health effects of that I talked about recently in several other podcasts I've done on dairy. So if you really want to learn about that and deep dive into that, take a listen to those episodes. But homogenization is a train wreck for inflammation and artery walls and the health of the artery walls and so forth. Anyway, they make it look like they're doing things to benefit us, but things like pasteurization, homogenization, this just further fuels the weakened gut microbiome that that has started pre-birth and at birth as well, with all the suppressives and so forth. Now, there are other things that deplete the gut microbiome. Why am I focusing on this? Because we're talking about what might be the root of your sluggish bowel when you're eating more carnivore based, when you're eating more butter, when you're eating more animal fat, right? These are all things that we need to take into consideration. We also need to consider your sunlight environment, okay? Sunlight has a huge effect on the health and well-being of your gut microbiome. Now, sunlight exposure is really, it's fascinating of just the panacea effects that sunlight has on the body, and including the gut microbiome. And the connection between sunlight and the gut microbiome isn't talked about that often, and it needs to be talked about much more frequently, because there's a huge connection between sunlight and the health of your gut microbiome. Sunlight exposure triggers the production of certain gut bacteria, beneficial gut bacteria. Okay, there are many, many, many different strains of bacteria that are synthesized from just you being outside with your skin in sunlight and your eyes exposed to sunlight. I'm going to focus just on one of these forms of beneficial bacteria today. Of course, there are thousands upon thousands, right? So one of those strains is beneficial E. coli. We've heard of the pathogenic E. coli, but there are also beneficial strains of E. coli. So guess what a side effect of a deficiency in beneficial E. coli is? Constipation, depression, moodiness. You know, most people go to laxatives or lithium or, you know, something like this for these symptoms. But before we go there, you know, check your sunlight environment before you go to those other alternatives. If possible, go to sunlight first. Sunlight in the UVA spectrum triggers the production of many beneficial microbes, including beneficial E. coli. This strain is actually called E. coli Nysel 1917, I believe. Okay. And so this is just one strain. Now, if you're thinking, oh, I have constipation, let me get a probiotic that contains this E. coli. No, don't do that. Just get in sunlight. Like, start with sunlight, right? Start with sunlight. Now, how does the sun, namely UVA light, stimulate beneficial gut microbes? Because you might be thinking, well, I'd like you to tell me how that works, Heather. Like, you know, I'd like to hear about that, right? So, there's a little science here, and I'm going to try to keep it very I'm not going to deep dive into the science, but we need to know a little bit here. So there's something called aromatic amino acids, and these play a really vital role in the production of beneficial gut microbes, and I should say in the synthesis of beneficial gut microbes. okay? Aromatic amino acids, these are activated in UVA light, okay? The aromatic amino acids have a benzene ring structure around them, and the benzene ring structure, it actually traps sunlight. So when you're outside and your skin's exposed to sunlight, and your eyes are exposed to sunlight, okay, here are these aromatic amino acids taking the sunlight in, and their molecular structure takes in the photons and literally traps them in their molecular structure, okay? Now, the aromatic amino acids, this process happens as long as your skin is preconditioned with AM sunrise light. So you need to have AM sunrise because UVA light isn't just present all the time. It's not just out there from sun up to sundown, okay? Sunlight varies throughout the day. So in the morning, you have AM sunlight, and it's kind of like before you go for a run or you work out, you do a warm up, right? So your cells also need a warm up when it comes to that warm up is sunlight and the varying degrees of sunlight. So you're outside and you watch the sunrise and you're in AM sunlight. This is the warm up for your cells. Your cells need this, and the aromatic amino acids need this. They need this preconditioning, because then when UVA light shows up after AM sunlight, they're ready to go. They're like, okay, I can now accept UVA light and trap that light within, their structure and put that light to use. Okay. So I teach this to you in my Sunlight RX ebook that you can get on my site for less than $20. And I highly recommend this, especially if you're somebody who's listening to the podcast and you're like, I struggle with constipation. I don't actually get that much sunlight. In fact, I'm never outside in morning sunlight. It's like it's going to be worth the less than $20 investment. But the aromatic amino acids, what are those? There's tryptophans, phenylalanine, tyrosine, all of which play multiple roles in the body, including, thyroid production, dopamine and serotonin production, melatonin recycling. Now, dopamine and serotonin in and of themselves are also involved in the synthesis of beneficial gut microbes, okay? So, now, you might be thinking to yourself, like, okay, this is interesting. I'm learning a few things, but what does it have to do with the carnivore diet and helping me poop better, right? You're like, get to the point, right? So hopefully you're connecting the dots, though, here as to how allopathic meds, our lack of connection to the natural world, which puts us in contact with all these strains of bacteria and microbes in the soil and the dirt and the farm animals, etc., right? And how sunlight, and if you're not getting enough sunlight, if you're more in a state of sunlight deficiency, how all of these things play into the constipation picture. You can quickly, easily, and effectively rectify your sunlight environment by learning and practicing the Sunlight RX, okay? Now, those strains of bacteria like the beneficial E. coli, they are activated and synthesized by UVA light. And it's not just like UVA, there's a list of, okay, now tyrosine's activated, phenylalanine's activated, and how that plays out in the synthesis of gut bacteria. But I wanted to bring up that one strain because many people who have chronic constipation are deficient in that strain of many strains of bacteria, but that is one of them. And that can be supported just by practicing the Sunlight RX. So if you're not doing that, that's a really great way, a really affordable way, or something you can do wherever you are on the planet, is go outside and get sunlight exposure and support your gut microbiome. Now it's going to be a whole other podcast when I talk about like the eye clock and why this even happens and how you even synthesize bacteria from sunlight. But you'll start to get that picture and understand that story more deeply by when you read into the Sunlight RX. Okay, so um, so yes, we have to expose ourselves to more natural microbes. We have to increase our sunlight exposure, and we need to do things like start a compost pile, culture butter, make homemade kefir, drink these things, walk barefoot outside, and get your Sunlight RX on. Okay, these are things you can do right now to start supporting your gut health, right? And make sure you add some sort of cultured food to your meals, some sort of fermented food, okay? Now, this doesn't have to be something like sauerkraut or pickled this or that. It can be if you like those things, but all foods, literally all foods, contain some degree of beneficial microbes unless they've been triple washed at the grocery store. This is another reason to buy from your local farmers or to grow your own, because you know that thing hasn't been, like, they wash chicken eggs in bleach, and then even the pasture raised ones, because they can't sell them otherwise at the grocery store because of microbial contamination. It's like, WTF, you guys. Like, really, we are not exposed to enough microbes. So take a look at that. Kefir, yogurt, fermented veggies, cultured yogurt, naturally cured meats, raw milk. You don't have to go wild with these. You don't have to go extreme, but adding a little to your diet can be a helpful practice. Okay, it can be supportive to your gut microbiome. And make sure not to cook the snot out of your meat and seafood. Rare, medium rare, this is your friend. There's going to be more beneficial microbes in those foods. Let's talk for a minute about minerals. One thing about any extreme diet, any hardcore diet, keto, carnivore, even vegan, is that it's easy to develop mineral imbalances on these kind of diets. Of course, we need minerals for thousands upon thousands of physiological processes in our body, including healthy digestion, the absorption and assimilation of nutrients, the health of our bones and hormones. These are a few examples, right? Many people are deficient in minerals. Drinking too much water. Yes, you can overdo it and then just pee them out. Eating too many veggies, then you get like loose stool, or you get too many anti-nutrients in your gut, which blocks the absorption of nutrients. These can all cause mineral absorption issues. Whenever there's loose stool, now this is the opposite, end of the spectrum of what we're talking about today, but whenever there's loose stool, too many the minerals aren't being fully absorbed or properly absorbed. Not eating enough quality sea salt from the actual sea, okay? Taking too many minerals in supplement form. I never find it a wise idea to supplement with things like magnesium or other minerals, because this quickly creates imbalances in the body with regard to other minerals, and can have a laxative effect, and which right there, any laxative is going to deplete minerals from the body. So to help regulate your stool on a more carnivore-based diet, make sure you include plenty of mineral-rich foods into your diet. This includes mineral spring water. Okay, if it's truly spring water, it's going to have minerals in the water. If you're drinking RO water, you may not be getting enough minerals into your system. That could be an issue. So I think you're seeing that there are a lot of layers to explore here when it comes to why someone is struggling with sluggish bowel for any reason, including on a carnivore-based diet, right? Most people are going to give you the general recommendations: drink more water. Sure, if you're not drinking enough water, or if you're drinking RO, make sure you're drinking spring water. This can be helpful, right? Or people are going to recommend taking a magnesium supplement. That's a Band-Aid. It's not a good idea. It's going to create mineral imbalances with other minerals in your body. Okay. So, now we have to, let's look at the deepest layer here, because maybe you've tried all of these things I've talked about so far. Okay. We have to remember that each person is going to have a different response to what they put in your body, right? Frank did amazing with the ribeye diet. Debbie does awesome with meat, salt, and water. You do horrible, right? You don't do good with it. Doesn't go well. And so, right, that's when we have to go beyond the scope of general suggestions. And because you can do all the right things and then feel like a lost cause and then be like, forget it. I'm just, I'm just not gonna poop again. That's just it, right? So, but let's look at a deeper level and approach here, which means we have to take your individual symptoms into consideration. And you might be thinking, what do you mean, Heather? Constipation's constipation. What do you mean individual symptoms? Well, believe it or not, there are very unique symptoms with regard to constipation. Some people go multiple times a day, but just a little like sheep dung stool comes out. Some people skip several days and they don't have a bowel movement or an urge at all. Some people have a constant urge and nothing comes out, or just a little bit comes out. Some people have abdominal cramping and rectal pain, and they have to sit on the toilet and strain for a long time to make sure anything comes out. Some people run to the bathroom at 5 or 6 a.m. and they feel like they're going to have diarrhea, and then only a little bit of stool comes out. You see, we have to take into consideration somebody's unique symptoms. Constipation is not just constipation. We can say that about any disease. Cancer is not just cancer. High blood pressure is not just high blood pressure. And the medical system and Google and AI and whatever other BS they're creating leads you to think that, oh, if you just have this thing, then do this thing. It's not black and white. Your body's not black and white. Healing is not black and white. And they've trained physicians into, they don't spend time teaching them about how to understand someone's symptoms, when this is the most important thing to understand if we really want to help somebody get better. Period. We have to understand their symptoms. And this is where the whole topic of homeopathy comes up. Okay, if you're new to homeopathy, welcome. Hey, this is an amazingly effective and holistic form of medicine that's capable of reversing and rectifying even the most stubborn conditions, including constipation. I'm actually going to be launching an online homeopathy course later this month, around the beginning of April. So those of you intrigued by this medicine and its capabilities can learn more. And what I want to say about homeopathy with regard to sluggish bowel is this. Okay, here we go. One, homeopathy is capable of, and here we go, here comes the censorship, it's going to get flagged, reversing the damage caused by allopathic medications. This is why the F as in Frank, D as in Dad, and A as in Airstream continuously attempts and threatens to ban the sale of homeopathic remedies. This is why they have started flagging my emails that to my homeopathic clients. They just started blocking them on Gmail. I had to totally get rid of my Gmail and get a non-censored email, because just last week they started blocking my emails that said homeopathy or gave instructions on how to take a remedy to my clients for their protection, right? And so they started taking, some of my students, they started taking down their anything that mentioned homeopathy on their some of my students have TikTok and took it down. TikTok is a just Chinese nightmare. Just nobody should have that. Just stop using it. It's a horrific highly censored platform. But anyway, they're threatened by this medicine. That's why. Anything that they're threatened by, that threatens them, that threatens their agenda, block it, take it off, okay? And so this is why. This is why They don't like it. It threatens them, which it threatens their medicine, which we know doesn't work. But here's the deal. If you struggle with chronic constipation or any chronic ailment for that matter, and you do all the right things with your diet, with your water intake, with your sunlight environment, you're like, what the heck? I still have this issue, right? This is when we need to deep dive. We need to dive deeper into your unique symptoms, past health history, genetic predispositions, so we can use this modality, homeopathy, to help remove these blocks to healing. Okay, because these are blocks to healing and they're big blocks to healing that need to be addressed. And sometimes diet and sunlight, astoundingly supportive to health as they are, they may not be able to move the needle enough when there's a deeper root cause issue going on. Now, why? Well, here's a question. Why are these modalities, sunlight and diet, why are they sometimes not potent enough? Why? Why not? Because, the Gerson diet back in the day, everybody healed from cancer, right? But here we go. All goes back to allopathy, because allopathy and their suppressive meds and the effect they have on our immune system and gut and body act like a brick wall, placing a chokehold on any forward movement with healing. They know this. They know it. The brick wall needs to come down. Okay. It's strong, it's stubborn, and it's often very possible to start breaking this wall down with homeopathy. Okay. We have to start chiseling away at it. Now, of course, you have to get the correct remedy and the correct dosage and the correct potency to make forward movement. Okay. Homeopathy is available to anyone at this time, at least. Anyone can self-prescribe, which is awesome and irresponsible all at the same time. Because no matter what, no matter how much you Google your symptoms, Google doesn't know shit about homeopathy or how to understand somebody's unique symptoms, and it never will. This is something a computer or a robot or AI will never, ever get or understand. So if you've self-prescribed before and you're like, I'm a lost cause, or homeopathy doesn't work for me, or, if you haven't had really good and extensive training in this field, it likely isn't homeopathy. It's likely that you just need a deeper knowledge base to get you the correct remedy and so forth. Okay. So, what else do I want to say here about this today? We hear all the time that we have a built-in immune system, let it do its job. Well, in most cases, people have weakened and depleted their immune systems to such an incredible degree. Much of the immune system lines the gut. So, of course, your gut microbiome and the function of your gut is going to be sensitive and easily triggered, and is going to have issues throughout your life, right? And so we've weakened and depleted the gut and our immune system to such an incredible degree that it actually can't do its job. So we have to course correct. We have to retrain it to do its job again by breaking down this wall caused in great part by allopathy. And there isn't enough vitamin C or elderberry or ginger extract in the world to overcome the effects of allopathic damage. Sure, these things, not that these things are bad, right? These things aren't necessarily bad, especially if you get the correct form of vitamin C, which I did a podcast way back when. Never take ascorbic acid. Go back and find the podcast on vitamin C to learn why and how to get healthy forms of vitamin C in. But, again, it's not that these things are bad. It's that our modern medicines have weakened our organism to such a degree that those things might have helped Granny back in the day, but they're not strong enough to help modern people overcome chronic conditions. So, this is where homeopathy is a big win, a huge support. You can go to my site to book a session, heatharshepard.com. Go to, I believe it's the homeopathy tab, and book a session. So the last thing I want to mention today is about laxatives. Emergency situations only, period. And this includes all laxatives I've mentioned here today and all the others, including magnesium supplementation, Senate, even things like milk of magnesia. What these things do is, one, they weaken peristaltic activity in the gut. So they basically atrophy your gut muscles, making your constipation worse in the long run, worse over time. And then they also increase your dependency and dosage on these supplements because your body will just need more and more and more and more and more to try to get the same effect. And eventually the same effect will just stop. There will no longer be an effect. Laxatives also empty out a large portion of the bowel. So, this is unnatural. The entire colon isn't supposed to dump when you dump. So this is what happens when you take a laxative, which sets the stage for more constipation because then you have to wait for the food to get, to travel further throughout the gut before you have your next movement. Okay? Laxatives make this issue worse. Laxatives, and what do I mean by laxatives? Magnesium is a laxative. Senate is a laxative. These decrease the absorption of minerals in the gut. They interfere with assimilation of nutrients, and they dehydrate the gut, all of which lead to more constipation. Now, enemas can be great to cleanse once in a while, but regular enemas have the same laxative dependency effect. You're not going to get to the root, okay? These should be used only in the short term, enemas. Now, to help rectify this situation from a root place, try implementing the dietary suggestions I mentioned through this episode. Get your Sunlight RX on, get your hands in the dirt, and then to really get to the root cause of this, if you're still bumping up against a wall after you incorporate these things into your lifestyle, book a homeopathic session with me so we can start to address the blocks to healing around why you struggle with constipation. So you can eat meat, you can eat amazing, high quality meat, benefit from it, and have amazing bowel movements. The Primal Pioneer podcast isn't meant to diagnose, treat, or cure any condition and should be used for informational and educational purposes only. America, home of the free.